it would be the equivalent of a firefighter trying to put out the fire at your house while you're constantly sitting there going, how long is this going to take? Who started the fire? I want to know what happened. And they're like, this is not the time for that.
Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right. Protect your patience. Day and night. Donna and David, the experts on your side. Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right.
You know, cybersecurity guidance is all over the place. There's frameworks and there's standards. There's best practices. There is never a shortage of advice. But organizations, especially the small ones, always struggle with that information. It's not a lack of information. It's like, but what do we do that's actually going to move the needle? What's going to lower our chances of having a bad day? And well, today we're going to be talking about the CISA CPGs version 2. We've talked about these before, not version 2 though. Mm-hmm. And according to Donna, this might be the absolute best small to medium-sized business cybersecurity approach yet.
Yeah, I am encouraged by the changes that were made and that I think people can, this is the most usable thing in my mind, but we all know about what's in my mind. It doesn't really always.
It's not always usable or practical.
I think it's great. No, you're going to need to sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, CISA is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. I feel like it took me like a year to figure that out before.
Yes.
It's like you get tongue-tied saying it. But they've created these things. They're CPGs is what we call them. They're Cybersecurity Performance Goals. So how well are you doing with cybersecurity within your organization? Are you meeting these goals that will reduce the risks and liabilities that you have? And the good thing about the way this works is in this version, it takes and looks at things about your organization. It looks at, what your size is, what the complexity of the tasks are. It's not a framework like NIST cybersecurity framework. It's more like a self-reporting report card kind of thing. Just saying that, look, I'm doing a lot of the best practices. I'm not following a framework, which is more comprehensive, but I'm doing these best practices that's going to move the needle. So let's talk about how this works and how it kind of fits into the overall discussion of cybersecurity for an organization.
Well, yeah, remember, goals is the operative word there. Your goal should be to have these things in place. So you got goal number 1, do this. So, we all have gone through something where you had your to-do list, but the to-do list was to ultimately attain a goal that wasn't just to check something off the list, right? And so these are the goals that if you follow these, that was the whole idea, you would handle most of the cybersecurity needs. And they went back and they were looking at version 1.0, how did we do? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately what people are looking for is like, what should we do that's going to protect us from, it was like a bad hair day, a bad cyber day. What's going to protect us from that and make us safe? What should we focus on? What order? Where do I spend my money? How do I get leadership involved? These are all the questions we go through over and over and over. And particularly when you look at the smaller entities, and this is when I found these, we've been getting a lot of requests because more and more companies that aren't necessarily regulated are required to prove they're doing these things, whether it be, their cybersecurity insurance or, that they are actually looking at reality and the business owner's like, I don't want to be in the paper, or they've got business partners or they want to do acquisitions or be acquired. There's a bazillion reasons that you should be doing these. And the big thing is, how do I know that I'm not just saying, well, David told me to do it, so I'm good?
Yeah, that's the exact thing I tell people all the time. The reason I put you in a framework, the reason I have the CPGs and other things that I measure you against is so that it's not somebody saying, well, David said this was probably the best thing to do, and that's why I did it. Like, no, we're following this framework. And I want you to be able to take that framework. And if you're going to talk to your insurance provider, there's the framework. They understand it too. They live in the same world. If I get hit by a bus and you decide to go to another MSP, you can take that framework and say, this is what we're doing and what we've been doing. So it's something that is universal, and a lot of people a lot smarter than me come up with these frameworks, and it just makes sense to roll those out.
Yeah, well, and so that's what we were trying to get to with the first version. And they came back and they really started getting the feedback and looking at the results from using the first version that's been out a few years now. And they released in December 2025 the updated 2.0. And they really came back and said, look, we've got 4 problems we're going to solve with this version 2. One is operational technology cybersecurity, which is the OT. And we brought it up before. Everybody just kind of forgets about it because they're worried about the business IT systems, not the IT systems that run the heating and air or, the Coke machine.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything these days.
Yeah. And now you're going to start adding, AI in there as part of it as well. So that area is being overlooked and under-resourced. So they're like, we got to keep that in mind. How can we fix that? They realize that many organizations still haven't adopted fundamental security. How many times we got to talk about basics like MFA? Still not happening. Yep. And it needs to be for everybody and everything it can be.
Oh, preach it. Yeah. I mean, because I do help support the small and medium-sized business sector, especially the smaller businesses. They are so much of a challenge. They either don't have the resources or they don't want to commit to the resources that it takes to protect themselves properly. Mm-hmm. And it's everything from I can't afford it or I don't want to afford it. That's usually the real, they don't say it that way, but that's usually what it is. Or there's like, I can do this thing with a free thing. Like somebody told me there's this free thing, which that always scares me to death because you're not getting anything for free. You're shifting cost. Yeah. I took a client on a few years ago and that's what they were like. Our IT guy didn't have a budget. And so everything he did was put us on open source free stuff. And my point to them was, yes, but you didn't avoid paying for it. You had to have a full-time IT person to manage these things because you didn't want to pay for the platforms that took less management. Yeah. So you just shifted costs. You didn't avoid them.
Exactly. And so that's the big picture is they're still looking at, we got tons of organizations that aren't even doing the basics. And then, of course, the small and medium-sized ones, like we just talked about, they're left behind. They struggle to figure out where to invest their money that will actually improve the posture and effectively implement these things, not just buy them. And, and how many people get the salespeople come in? All you got to do is
a lot.
The minute you hear, you get our stuff and you're good, you're golden, you got nothing to worry about. Out. Yeah. Get out.
I mean, it's like I can sell you a hammer, but what you do with is on you.
Yeah.
I've talked before about how we had a client that wanted some VPN licenses, and then we found out months later that like maybe 10% of the people used them. And so it's like you bought the tool and you thought you were secure in using this VPN, but nobody's using it.
Yeah, there's always more to just than buying. There's purchasing and implementation. And that's the part of it. But the other thing was a lack of consistent standards and maturity. Something we talk about is there's a significant inconsistency in investment and and the practices that are being chosen and implemented. So you're throwing money at it or you're not throwing money at it. There's that. And then even when you're doing things, they're not they're not mature. That's the nice way to say it. So they were trying to get past all of that and said, okay, we're gonna try to sharpen this up and made significant changes to the way that it's presented and what's included. And I think the language is more clear, and how to do the meaningful thing, like meaningful use for those of us in healthcare. But then don't get excited, don't get too excited, because there's still a disclaimer right there, right up front. CISA CPGs are not comprehensive. They do not identify all the cybersecurity practices needed to protect national and economic security and public health and safety. They capture a core set of cybersecurity practices with known risk reduction value broadly applicable across sectors.
Yep. So, in other words, this might not be all you need to do.
Right.
So don't come up here and say, I have great cybersecurity performance goals and therefore I don't need to do anything else. That's not the case.
Well, yeah. And so basically what you need to think of this as is that if I'm doing this, I have a solid foundation, and anything else I need to do is going to be built on that solid foundation. It's not, I got, 4 legs on 6 chairs. It's all kind of a different approach to it. And so what you're getting is this cross sector, meaning it'll apply to anybody. And they've prioritized this minimum set of things that if you do those, you're going to reduce your risk, but you're not doing compliance. Now, is some of this going to address regulatory compliance? Yes, absolutely. But if you go through and make sure you're doing this, because even if you're obligated to follow HIPAA or PCI or anything else, and you can't, get a gold star for your CPGs, that's where you need to invest now. Right there. Right?
Yeah.
That would be it.
This is your level 1 stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's not your big framework. It's not going to be like, oh, we're doing this cybersecurity framework now. But all of this corresponds to the NIST cybersecurity framework. Mm-hmm. It's not, if you do these things, you're going to be, considered a top-notch cybersecurity operation. But most small businesses just need to be some cybersecurity operation. And, there's nothing on here mandatory, but it's like we've talked about before. HIPAA is the floor, not the ceiling. Same thing here. This is
the subfloor.
It's the subfloor of HIPAA, and then for general businesses, it's the floor.
Yeah. Or like you said, it's the foundation. You can't have the floor without the foundation. Yeah. So, do those things. The really good thing about it from a small business perspective is if you aren't sure if the person you are dealing with, like an MSP or an IT person, like, are they pointing you in the right direction? This is a really good way to look at this and say, these are the things we should be doing. Do they align with what my outsourced IT or my internal IT is telling me we need to pay attention to? So it's a great way to kind of measure what you have there.
Yes. And so that's why everybody should be able to benefit from reviewing these. Best case is you're able to go, look, we're solid, we're golden, and you're just reiterating the success of your program, which is important. Mm-hmm. Yep. Worst case is you see how bad it is and how much you need to do. Most of us are going to land, somewhere in the middle, hopefully towards the golden. But, these changes are really, to me, what I think is making this more approachable, more usable, and overall going to protect people. So I want to run through just real quick what changes they made to the overall, because they don't look the same. Because first of all, a big thing they had to do was align to NIST CSF 2.0, because the original one's aligned to 1.1. And the big thing there is you added the govern function. And, really and truly, that's what our business does, is teach you how to govern things,
Mm-hmm.
is that's when we talk about, can you prove it, or any of those areas, is it written down? Do you have written policies? Is management actively involved? Are they saying, how are we doing? Are they following the information? This is where you're actually planning and managing cybersecurity, means that you can prove you're taking it seriously. Because if your business owners just think, well, somebody handles that, you're not taking it seriously.
All right.
So the govern function puts in that leadership accountability, the oversight, actual planning and management of these cybersecurity practices. So that's good. They realigned a bunch of stuff to put that in. They also streamlined the cross-sector alignment on the goals, merging a whole bunch of them into, like 3, where there used to be a whole bunch more. Made it smaller and more manageable to get rid of duplicate stuff. Because there was a lot of times, and we'll even see, oh, I did this, so that solves these 4 things. Okay. I should have just had the one thing. And but it also, deals with IT, IoT, OT. It covers the whole big picture, and you can just do this one thing without having all of these, domain goals, which was spread out before. And then the address emerging threats and gaps. And
wonder what that is.
we know it's in there somewhere. But proactive program management goes into it. It added that to say you need to review this regularly and stay on top of it, not just do it one time and then you're done. I really like that they said managed service provider risk. It captures risk from third-party providers that have deep access into your systems. So not just everybody, but the ones that really can cause the most trouble. And least privilege enforcement, we talk about that. Minimum necessary. And then incident communication procedures for internal teams, partners, and suppliers for crisis response. How many times have we brought that up, that people don't think about that? And the minute you do have a major problem, well, we know how to talk to each other. Okay, do you know how to talk to your clients, your business partners, no. So that's a huge piece. So they blended that in. And then, of course, we don't have to talk about the third-party importance. They deleted stuff, but kept the intent. So it's like they got rid of sections, but what those sections we're talking about, they merged, going back to, instead of 4 things that all kind of, interconnected, it's one thing. So that you get more adoption, because I don't have to do all 4. I'm doing one thing, and it's all connected. And then this, I think, is the key. So the other things are great. It's simplified things, but they added the cost, impact, and ease of implementation ratings to the report and the checklist, where before it had complexity. Again, not something the average person can use. Everything in IT is complex to the average person.
That's right.
So, it's about the way they did those things. And to me, that was huge, is the way they've added in this calculation and explained how they got to these things. And cost now isn't just some random thing. It's saying, look, your cost needs to cover the first year of implementation and recurring costs ongoing when I look at how much something costs. And but then there is something, as soon as I brought this up, you immediately had to go down this, where low cost is less than 5% of the annual security budget. Security budget, David.
Yeah, well, I mean, 5% of nothing is still nothing.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, we've talked about this before. It's been a long time ago, but the question came up years ago to me, a small client. So how much of my revenue should I be budgeting for IT? And we had that discussion, and we went down this long rabbit hole of trying to figure out that number. And I haven't looked at it in the past couple of years, but basically the number was your IT budget should be around 10 to 15%. Now, this depends on size of the business and complexity and all that other stuff, but that's your total spend of your systems, computers, cybersecurity, the whole 9 yards. So what they're saying here is that you should be spending 5% of that 15%.
Well, but I mean, it's talking about security budget. So just the security part of that should be segmented out. And so, it does start to really get into play, but they break it down. It's less than 5% is low, 5 to 15 is moderate. So anything over 15% is a high cost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when we're looking at the cost of implementation and maintaining and disposing of it later and all of those things, that's when they're putting a value on there. It's looking at the bigger picture, not just how much do I need to write a check for today,
Mm-hmm.
But then they added in this, I thought was hugely important, is it points out if you're not going to do one of the CPGs, not the ones you are, the ones you're choosing not to, that you should conduct a cost-benefit analysis that evaluates the benefits and the cost so that a decision maker can say, yeah, I get that. Where you look at, if we do this, the benefits it gives us is reduces downtime, reduces financial impacts, revenue losses, those things. We're able to respond quicker and not have to pull in as many people. It's not going to cost us as much to rebuild things, or we're not going to lose advantage or have reputational damage. So you're actually considering those things if you're choosing not to do it, which is kind of like under HIPAA what you're supposed to do in an addressable thing. You can't just not do it, but if you're going to do it in a different way than what's prescribed, if you will, you need to document why you think that's acceptable. So I think cost is huge, but that cost-benefit analysis requires you to look at the other two elements, which are impact and ease of implementation, no longer complexity. But then they use complex in the ease.
Right.
But, these are things we're used to talking about. How bad is it going to be? How much is it going to impact us? Do we have a limited adverse impact? Do we have serious and then severe or catastrophic? And then, of course, the implementation. Is it something that requires technical expertise, requires a little bit or a lot? And how long should it take? Can it be done in a few months? Does it take 4 to 8 months, or a significant amount of time in a project? So with all of those broken down, now they go into, here is your goal. To attain this goal, you should, number one is under govern. Number one, establish cybersecurity responsibilities. And, just saying so-and-so's in charge does not mean you have established it. Because they do say, here's your scope and here's your recommended action. And under recommended actions, it says all roles and responsibility involving cybersecurity are documented in the cybersecurity policy. They are related to cybersecurity policy or distributed across the organization. Third-party contractors can be involved in this, so you want to include them in the documentation. And the legal and regulatory stuff is included in there as well. And then they add in OT, that you do know there's OT exists. So that is, just the first item. That's 1A under govern, is that you should be able to say you've assigned responsibility not to an individual, but all of the different cybersecurity tasks or roles are assigned to someone. And I love this, the cost is low. Impact is high. Ease of implementation is moderate. And most people are like, I don't have time for that. Okay, it's about making time for it. So that's an example of the first govern one. There's other managed cybersecurity oversight, incident response plans, supply chain management. All of that is within govern, including manage risk for managed service providers.
Mm-hmm.
And
because we bring it.
So what do you think of the recommended action on that one, David? I know I shot down some stuff. But.
Yeah, so the recommended action, develop and maintain an understanding of the services, including the security products provided by the MSP. Understand contractual agreements and proactively address any security gaps that fall outside the scope of the contract. Wow. And you mean to tell me they don't do everything? And then it says, for example, contracts should detail how and when MSPs notify the customer of an incident affecting the customer's environment. Well, yeah, that's an example, but there's a lot more than that should be discussed. But yes, you shouldn't just think I have an MSP or I have an IT person or whatever, and they do everything. I promise you, they do not do everything.
No.
There are things they do. There are things they don't do. There are things that are in scope of the contract. There are things that are out of scope of the contract. You need to have an understanding of what that is. If your MSP is not telling you that, whether they told you once and you don't know what it is now, whatever it is, these are conversations that should be had. And I would say you probably want to have this conversation periodically.
Yeah.
Maybe once or twice a year. Hey, let's go back over the services that you're providing. Help me understand the security products. Now, you don't need to know brand names. None of that really matters. What you need to understand is what's covered, what's not covered, what is being secured, what is not being secured. You have no idea where your risks and gaps are if you don't know that.
Exactly. So on this one, we look at the cost is moderate, the impact is moderate, but the ease of implementation, it is complex because you've got to have conversations about contracts and services provided. But another thing that's on each one of these goals is support resources. And there are two links. One is protecting against cyber threats to managed service providers and their customers. And the other is risk considerations for managed service provider customers. And we've gone through both of those.
Yeah. I just want to add too on this one. When we talk about managed service providers in this context with this document, understand that they are talking about any service provider that remotely manages any infrastructure, cybersecurity, processes, business operations. It's not just IT. It could be, this company remotes in to help us with our EHR. This company remotes in to help us with our copiers and scanners. All those are considered managed service providers in this framework.
Well, yeah, and your heating and air people are now connecting, and you have to account for anything that can connect. You must protect it.
Right. So when we're talking about managed service providers, it's not just managed IT service providers. It's anybody provide a service that needs to be remotely managed.
All right, but then it keeps going. So govern is the big one. It added and kind of merged things together. So you got A through E on there. Then it gets into the rest of what's always been the IPTers, as we know it. Or the other one.
I like mine better.
I know. Our own internal FCC hates it when we go through that. But anyway, they identify. And first thing, guess what? Manage organizational assets. And everybody hates that part and tells us why they can't do it. But it's the number one thing. I don't care what cybersecurity controls you're trying to implement. All of them revolve around assets. Knowing what you have and where it lives and who has access to it. If you don't know that, you can't protect it.
Nope.
So there are there are links to asset inventory information. Then you get mitigate known vulnerabilities. That does not sound new, does it? Obtain independent validation of cybersecurity controls.
This is this gets on a conversation I had recently where a company said they have a proposal from another IT company, and part of the proposal is an annual security risk assessment of the IT. And I'm like, so they're looking at their own stuff and then grading themselves. Is that right? And he's like, well, this is what it sounds like. I said, do you think it's a great idea that they're doing an assessment on themselves? He's like, no. I was like, I don't either. I think they should do that, but I don't think that should be the only thing they're doing. They certainly should assess themselves, but they should have a third party coming in and double checking.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had multiple conversations with IT providers who, well, they want to merge with us or they want to do some sort of reciprocity referral. And I'm like, I can't have a financial relationship with you. My job is to judge you.
Yeah.
So
that's a conflict of interest, if you ask me.
yeah.
And we see that. We have seen it for years where there are companies out there that do that. Like we will come in and we will look behind you to make sure you're doing everything right and give you a kickback. And I'm like, what?
Exactly. So, but we're talking about penetration tests and incident simulations, tabletop exercises, those kind of things. And everybody can do a tabletop exercise. Everybody can.
Mm-hmm.
But there's information there. Maintain vulnerability disclosure reporting process. This one, its cost is low, its impact is low, and ease of implementation is moderate. That's going to be at the end of everybody's list for a reason. But there are things that you should be doing in there, but it depends on the type of business. Document network topology has a high impact because if I don't know what's in the network and how they're all talking to each other, again, where's something happening?
I mean, this goes back to like the assets. Like if you don't know, where do you start? That's where you start. Like you start by knowing what you have and where it's at.
Yeah.
That's where you start.
Yeah, that's it. All right, so that's in identify. Then once you've identified it, you got to protect it with changing default passwords, establishing minimum password strength, having unique credentials. Hey, these sound vaguely familiar.
They do, but nobody does the next one. So
revoke credentials for departing staff.
we don't do that. We just give the next person their credentials. I'm like, why is Susie logging in as John? Isn't John gone? Yeah, we just gave her his account, and so she just logs in. Okay.
Monitor unsuccessful automated login attempts. And I think that's a great thing that they added in there. Not just monitor unsuccessful login attempts. You know, we all have a failure of logging in from time to time. You don't need to pounce on all of those. But when you see it happening over and over and over, you know there's a brute force attack happening.
Right. Yeah. Somebody's trying to get in. When you see the doorknob jiggling in the middle of the night, you probably should pay attention.
Exactly. That's what it is. That is the doorknob jiggling. Boy, that brings up everybody's adrenaline, doesn't it? Just thinking of that. David giving everybody nightmares. Thank you. Implement MFA. So put that chair under the doorknob. Administrators maintain separate user and privilege accounts. The principles of least privilege, where you do a quarterly regular review, make sure that what your role is, you have the proper assignment, not too much, not too little, just right. Goldilocks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I would say too, this is a good place to kind of slide the AI conversation in, just to say, when you're implementing AI, you need to make sure that it uses separate user and privilege accounts and follow the principles of least privilege. Treat it just like you would treat a brand spanking new employee.
Yes. And people are doing that. They're named their AI, so it is an employee.
That's right.
We talk about the AI tools as if they are staff members. Then implement logical physical network segmentation. I know people. Yeah. There's a lot to worry about.
The cost is high.
Yeah.
And it's complex.
Yeah. High, complex. So that should tell you that although it has that rating, it's hugely important because high impact. So there's a certain amount, and you don't have to have a small environment can have just some segmentation, not huge layers.
Yeah, I would say that I know it says cost is high, but honestly, for a small business, it's probably not.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind.
Yes.
It's kind of like, well, what do you consider high? Is it $100, 100,000? What is it? It's a bit subjective.
It's over 15%, David.
15% of nothing.
Still nothing. Yes. But then we have implement cybersecurity training, use strong encryption, enable email security, David's favorite thing. Mm-hmm. Disable auto run and macros by default. Hello. And you look at that. Cost is low, impact moderate, ease of implementation, simple.
Simple. Yeah, usually you get prompted.
Yeah.
Do you want to run this? No.
Establish change management processes, please. And this, again, another spot where AI comes in. You need to have AI on your asset inventories because it's software tools that you're using, and you need to have it documented all along the way like other software, but it needs a special kind of control when we're looking at change management processes. When you start...
I do appreciate that they put complex as the ease of implementation on this part.
Yeah, but I mean, it gets back to, if you're going to do a big project, you need to document how it's going to work. And that's essentially change management. We're going to implement something new. We're going to take something out. We're going to add something in. You have to have controls of who's in charge and who's allowing these things to happen.
Yeah.
Maintain system backups and restoration ability. There's that key. Restore, David.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't stop with just maintain system backups. Good job. Whoever added restoration ability, I appreciate that.
Because you don't buy backup, you buy restore.
Yeah.
Maintain hardware and software approval process. Please, again, here we have AI, big piece of this. Because if you're not actually going through an approval process and everybody is just the Wild West of apps out there, well, you shouldn't be doing this list anyway then.
Yeah. We see that in the smaller companies. It's like, so this person's using Apple. This person is using Windows. This person is using Linux. It's like, oh my gosh, y'all.
Yeah.
One person is using Google. One person is using Microsoft.
It's all over the place.
It's just all over the place. It's all over the place.
Maintain log collection and storage. We've talked about, your logs from your security logs and tracking of what's there. Prohibit connection of unauthorized devices. Hello. Secure internet-facing devices.
Yeah, all of them.
Yes. It didn't say some.
Yeah.
And then you get to detect.
Yeah. This is where we want to be.
Well, okay, so explain this one, though, and I think this has to do with the layers that you use. Establish malicious code detection. Explain that.
So, I mean, in a nutshell, you're looking for ways that threats can come into the organization, and it's, again, coded. It's coded. So, how can the malicious software have some type of payload or droppers or backdoors? What other kind of ways can adversaries use malware to do like remote access or remotely control a machine, evade defenses, execute some type of post-compromise actions? All that is what happens within some of the tools that we use, and which is another reason why a lot of it has to be automated, and some of it's AI, some of it's not. But it's just so complex, which is why the cost is moderate and the implementation is moderate, but the impact is high.
Well, and it's the world, we used to call that antivirus, but that's not what it does anymore. And the software doesn't even work the same way. If you're still using the software that works the same way as that one did, where you got once a day or, every week you get your updated virus list and load it, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, back then we did everything on basically what was called patterns or signatures. So it would just say, oh, we know that all of these viruses look like this and they have this signature, and we just look for that. Now there's lots more than that. There are all types of non-signature based things, like they focusing on behavioral and analytics and heuristics and anomalies. Just something as simple as somebody logged in, in South Carolina, and then an hour later they logged in California. Like, that's impossible for that to happen. So they look for things like that, among other things. There's a lot of it. We just got one today. An email rule was created. Okay, that's nothing is wrong with that at all, except for the fact that this person never creates email rules, and it's it's one of the behaviors that tends to happen when an account gets compromised. Mm-hmm. And so we want to look at that. It gets detected and we look at it.
And that's exactly where we go with the next one, is identify adverse events. You said, not only did that person not normally add a rule, they didn't add it this time.
No, they did not. And it indeed was a compromised account.
So it's an adverse event. And then you have to know into the next section, respond. This is the establish incident communication procedures. This is huge. And until you've gone through a big event, you don't understand how important that is. And once you do understand it, you think you will never have enough of it. So,
yeah, this is the section where no MSP really wants to be. Like, we want to prevent it. We want to detect it, prevent it. We don't want to respond, right? Yeah. Because that means that it's probably a successful event at that point. And it is very, very critical that people understand that this is the time when you and the MSP or the IT provider, this is the time to work together like there's no other time. Like, pointing fingers and getting pissed off and all that, it does not help this situation at all. No. Trying to figure out what was, whose responsibility was what. This is not the time to figure that piece out. It really was the time to figure that out long before now, but definitely don't do it during the response phase. It's a highly critical time to get things right. Don't stand over the person's shoulder and hound them about what's being done and how quickly is it going to get done and all that. You want people to be focused on the task at hand.
Yeah, you want to go, do you need something else to drink? Do you need something to eat? And then come back another hour. Do you need something? That's it.
Yeah. I mean, it would be the equivalent of a firefighter trying to put out the fire at your house while you're constantly sitting there going, how long is this going to take? Who started the fire? I want to know what happened. And they're like, this is not the time for that.
That is a really good analogy there. All right. So, and establish incident reporting procedures. And keep in mind, this is geared towards critical infrastructure organizations. So you may find areas where you don't really, who are you supposed to report an incident to? You might not have anybody, but you should consider reporting incidents into CISA or the FBI because they're actually trying to go after criminals. And if you're not telling them, then they can't include that information into what they're doing. And then the recovery, of course, having a recovery plan. You are capable of safely and effectively recovering from a cybersecurity incident. And I think a lot of people don't realize that's not something you do in like an hour. No.
That's why the ease of implementation is complex. It's a lot.
Yes.
And it can last months.
I mean, there's so many cases where months and months and months before you're completely recovered. So, anyway, that's the list, and why the CPGs are, they're made for us to be able to have something to point to, like David pointed out earlier, is to say these are the things. If I know I'm doing these things, and if you read them one at a time and read all the little boxes, you'll start to see what I'm talking about. When I say this may be one of the most useful ones for a small business that has been put out to date. So.
Yeah. And this document's only 35 pages, and that includes a few pages for the glossary.
Yeah.
So it's a very quick read. It's very easy to understand. So they did a good job on putting this together.
Yeah, there's supposed to be checklists and some other tools, but I haven't found them to be available yet. However, I will continue to search for them and probably build our own if they don't show up soon.
That's right.
But the version 1 is out there for their checklist. Like if you go CISA CPG checklist, it'll give you version 1 so you can compare it to what we just talked about and know they are not the same. If it doesn't start with govern,
right.
Then you've got the other one. If it starts with identify, you got the old one.
That's a good way to look at it. It's very easy to look at that. All right. Well, that's our show for today, folks. Thanks for listening. Go out there and grab that resource. It'll be on our website, so you can take a look at that. Yeah, it'll be very helpful. So be sure to share this out. If you're watching us on YouTube or listening on YouTube, then give us a thumbs up, all that good stuff. We appreciate it. And remember, for Donna and myself, that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.